Hello and welcome to the Adrian podcast, the interview series, where we take a deep dive into some of the most influential minds in real estate. Today we're joined by the fabulous Lisa Novak. Lisa, thanks so much for coming on to the show.
Thanks, Adrian. Thanks for having me.
Absolute pleasure. It's just always great to catch up, isn't it?
It is. Couldn't agree more.
We've known each other for how many years now?
A really long time. We were just trying to work that out, but it's a really long time.
Because you were saying previously you were Eastern Suburbs girl who
Yeah.
then became a Northern Beaches agent.
Yeah.
I actually think I recall when you were in, was it the beauty business previously?
We had a college of
Yes.
natural health and beauty.
That's
My
right.
family did.
Yes.
Many moons ago.
That's
Many moons
when
ago.
I initially
Yeah.
met you. Was I think yourself and your
Yeah.
mother, and we were doing, I think, when I was back in the McGrath days, we were maybe looking at buying, leasing or renting something in those days. Yeah.
Yes, many
Yeah.
moons ago.
Long
many
time,
moons ago.
long time ago. Wow, we're
Yeah.
showing our age.
Yeah, that's right. Well, you are.
Yes, yes. So how long in the real estate industry altogether, and then
Yeah.
how long in sales?
Yeah. So I have been really behind the scenes of our business,
Yes.
Novak Properties, for 20 years.
Yes.
I was always working in more of an admin-based role, then moved into marketing, then moved into a general manager role.
Yes.
But I'd always wanted to be in real estate sales, Adrian, and I decided that at the grand old age of 46, I was going to take the plunge headfirst into sales. So 5 years ago.
Wow. And Novak Property is a family business with Mark and yourself.
Correct.
And that's been going for 20 years.
It has, yeah,
Okay.
just over 20 years now, yeah.
Fantastic.
Yeah.
And the roles that you had within that business, did you ever think at that time, whether it was operations, general manager, admin or whatever, did you ever think that it would lead into sales, or was it just at that most recent time at that age that you mentioned that you
Yeah.
made the transition?
I always wanted it to be sales.
Did you?
You
Right.
know, it was just my family, so the kids and the business just needed me elsewhere.
Right.
But always I had wanted to be in sales. And honestly, I got to the age of 46 and thought it's just got to be now or never.
Yep.
You know, I'm getting too old. I need energy to be able to do this. And I wanted to, I wanted to cut ground quick.
Yes.
Because I was 46 and I had some big dreams and aspirations.
Fantastic.
Yeah.
So what core market did you choose to specialise in? Obviously where the office is located in the Northern Beaches there,
Yeah.
but specifically.
I didn't. I just knew that whatever I was going to do, if I was going to sacrifice so much,
Yes.
not being at home as much and time away from family and friends, that I just wanted to be number one. And how I got there, or how I was going to get there, I didn't know. But I really didn't have my focus on any particular area. Obviously, it was going to be Northern Beaches, but we don't work in farming areas. So I was just like, I'm happy to list and sell anything.
And the first few listings, and in terms of where your business has evolved to now, has it changed much geographically? What areas have they included?
It has. So when I first started out in sales, I had no listings. And we'll get into the social media thing, I'm sure, at some
Yes.
stage during our talk.
Yes.
But I kind of fell into the whole social media thing.
Yes.
But what I did discover was there was a lot of expired listings on the market. And I would just scour realestate.com and our website, and I decided that I was just going to, write expired listing cards and deliver them out to all these properties that were on the market. We've always had a really extensive database. So I knew there were buyers somewhere there in our database. And I ended up getting about 23 phone calls.
Wow.
As a result of the expired listing cards, and listed 12 of them in my first 4 weeks
Wow.
of being in real estate sales.
Were any of
Yep.
those calls from infuriated agents who didn't want you to contact their clients?
No.
No.
No, they weren't, because look, to be fair, these properties had been on the market for a really, really long time. And that can happen. I have
Yes.
had those phone calls before.
Yes.
But no, they weren't. No.
So expired listings was a great source of business for you then, and it still happens to be today.
Without a doubt.
What do you say for that other side of the argument, which is, for agents who might feel that, well, you don't want other agents contacting clients that you're representing, for example. I mean, is there some rules of engagement in terms of, how long should you wait till it's on the market, and therefore what's the dialogue that you would use? Obviously, at that time you wrote cards and got the calls.
Yeah.
But has that process evolved, and what would you say for agents that would be a little bit hesitant because they don't want to get other agents or clients offside?
Look, I think there's a certain timeline in our industry where agents can go stale as well, Adrian,
Yes.
to be fair.
Yes.
And so if a property's been sitting on the market for more than 90 days, I think we can comfortably say an agent who's probably just at their wits' end as to what they can do.
Yep.
It's important to, you don't want to step on the toes of other agents. That's definitely not my way. But it's also, is it about the client or is it about the agent? Because at the end of the day, our job is to get properties sold. And often just, speaking to the vendors about, what went wrong with their campaign, or do you feel that there was something that could have been improved upon? What was it? Was it the price? Was it the product? Was it the way the property was marketed? Listening to what those vendors' needs are. Often these vendors need a lifeline thrown at them. But again, as I said, I'm not here to step on any agent's toes. But what I do notice with a lot of the expired listings is that often there'll be no inspection time. Often the marketing hasn't been changed maybe throughout the entire duration of a campaign. Often there hasn't been a meet the market price because maybe agents have been too scared to have the conversations with those agents. And then when I come face to face with these vendors that have had their properties on the market for too long, often, as I said, they just want the honesty. And I'll come in and I'll say to those vendors, guys, I truly think your property is overpriced.
Yes.
This is where I feel it sits in the current market. We need to redo all of that marketing, and I'm happy to pay for that. And any other, let's get some open times and let's get some fresh blood through this property. Just on that, I actually just sold a property in the eastern suburbs.
Yes.
It's an area where I'm from, but
Yes.
it's not an area that I transact in.
Yes.
I had a great agent who reached out to me. They were at their wits' end. This property had been on the market for over 400 days. And I came along and did a conjunction with that agent and got it sold in 25 days.
Amazing. And was there a dramatic change in price or just a minimal change in price? Minimal.
Yeah, minimal.
So apart from fresh energy and a fresh approach and potentially new marketing, which is, I assume, what we did, was there any other secret sauce involved?
Social media.
Right.
It's huge.
Yes.
It's huge. Everyone knows me for all the pre-market stuff that I do with my social media, but a lot of the social media that I do is also for the post-market. Right. I call it the post-market cleanup.
Yes.
So properties that have been on the market for too long.
Yes.
And getting them out to a whole new source of eyeballs that maybe haven't seen it before.
Excellent. Yeah, I'll definitely talk to you about the social media
Sure.
stuff. So
Yeah.
in terms of the current business as it is at the moment, so do you have an immediate team yourself?
I do.
Yeah?
Yeah,
And
I
what's
do
that
have a
consist
team.
of?
So I've got Michael who works alongside me.
Right.
Michael works like my built-in buyer's agent.
Yes.
So deals with a lot of my buyers. I look after all my properties, all my vendors and the high-end negotiations.
Yes.
And then I've got 2 assistants as well. I've got a senior assistant and a junior assistant. And those guys just do everything,
So mainly admin, marketing,
Correct.
not so much face-to-face client work,
No.
those 2 assistants.
That's
Okay.
right, yeah.
So that's an interesting model because
Yeah.
you talk to so many different agents about what
Yeah.
the perfect EBU is or what the perfect team looks like. And some have, one sales associate, one admin or business manager. Sounds like you've got sort of 2 business managers and then one a sales associate. And that sales associate is mainly dealing with buyers. You're mainly dealing with the vendors.
Correct.
But obviously is also helping out at open for inspections as well.
And the great thing about the model is that everyone has their lane.
Yes.
There's no crossover whatsoever. There's no like, oh, I thought you were doing it. No, I thought you were doing it.
Yeah.
Everyone has got their definitive roles and it works really, really well.
And at what point did you put on your first person? Because it's been a few years now since you've been doing
Yeah.
sales, 5 or 6 years, I believe. So at what point did you put on your first one and what did that role look like? Because that
So-
helps a lot of people because there's a lot of agents who are not at that point yet and feel that they've got to achieve certain metrics, certain number of sales.
100%.
Yeah, or maybe it's just the time in their life. But what was it for you that triggered the first team member?
It was about 12 weeks in. So
Right.
it was very, very soon.
Yep.
Because I didn't envisage that I was going to list as much property as I did. Now, this is every agent's dream. But
Yes.
for me,
Yes.
it was, I didn't have a gauge, which is crazy because I had always worked in the background of our business. But, I had never been the junior salesperson. And so coming into sales older, coming into sales with a good realm of background knowledge, enabled me to be able to list as many properties as I did. As I said, 12 properties in the first 4 weeks.
Yes.
And I'd had a conversation with a girlfriend of mine one night. We were out at dinner. She's
Yes.
in sales in the East.
Yes.
And I said to her, I've got all these listings, 12 of them. And she's like, what? You've been in sales for how long? And she said, you need to get an assistant. And so I did. And I have to say, it changed my life.
Yes.
It really did. Yeah.
And it evolved from there. So I assume the role for that first assistant could have been a hybrid role, which is a bit of admin, a bit of sales support.
Yeah, exactly.
And in order to get to the point where you are today with 3 team members, and as you said, with clearly defined swim lanes, that's ideal. Like everyone wants to get to that point.
Yeah.
Did you make some mistakes along the way in terms of team members, roles, the wrong people, or potentially you didn't direct them the right way? Was there some mistakes along the way?
There always is.
Yes.
There has to be, Adrian,
Yeah.
to be fair, because it's how we learn.
Yes.
And it sounds so cliche, but it's true.
Yes.
And at the time, you just think that you're never going to be able to just get back on track again.
Yes.
You feel like you're never going to be able to make it right. But it ends up being a blessing in disguise.
Yes.
And so, yes, there have been mistakes along the way. I've been very fortunate with my team, I have to say. Michael and I have worked together for 6 years, pretty much the whole time that I've been in real estate sales, and kind of fell into that by default.
Yes.
And I'm sure we'll get into it a little bit later on, but I do list, volumes.
Yes.
And so it can be tricky at times trying to deal with the buyer and the vendor and list and sell and do your social media.
Yes.
I only have as many hours in the day as every other person does.
Absolutely.
So very early on, again, I realised that if I can have someone that can deal with the buyer side of things, that frees me up even more to be able to do the things that I believe I'm good at and I love. I
Yes.
think that's very important.
Yeah, so we talk about being on purpose and making sure that you enjoy doing what you're doing. There's certain parts of the industry that you have to tolerate at points. No one
Yeah.
wants to have, an owner who's not happy, or no one wants to have buyers who are disappointed because they miss out or whatever. But that's part of the industry, especially if you're doing volume
It is,
yourself.
yeah.
And you talk about in focusing on the activities you enjoy. So I'm assuming that means listing property. I'm assuming that means negotiations, and I assume it means monitoring and controlling your social media as well,
Absolutely.
and showing buyers and dealing
Yeah.
with buyers, as well as Michael, obviously, who's
Yeah.
helping you. Is that what you mean by enjoying what you're doing?
100%.
Yeah.
Every day I get up and I ask myself, do I love what I do?
Yeah.
Every day. And so when the answer is no, I will stop doing it. You've got to make sure you love what you do because you'll be good at it.
Yes.
You'll be good at it. And I'm always asking my team, are you happy with what you guys are doing? We have meetings every single morning. That's really important because, then they'll do their best.
Yes.
They'll do their best. And, I'll get the best out of them as well.
And with your typical day in terms of listings and appraisals and negotiations, etc., how many on average face-to-face meetings would you have per day, regardless of what it is? Because they're obviously all dollar productive. All face-to-face meetings you're having are dollar productive. How many would you average per day, whether it's a listing appointment or submitting an offer or vendor update or a qualified buyer appointment?
So face-to-face, funnily enough, I don't do a huge amount of face-to-face. But in terms of appraisals and meetings,
Yes.
I would be having on average 5 a day. On average, in terms of appraisals, I'm doing about 3 to 5 a day.
Right.
So there's, I'm doing a huge amount of appraisals there. I don't love to do 2 touches either. I love to
Yes.
take pricing with me.
Yes.
These days you have a very short attention span, I find, with people. And so the 2 touch, I find for me, doesn't work as effectively.
Okay. So when you say 3 to 5 per day, okay, and they're all highly dollar productive activities.
Without a doubt, yep.
But when you said not all are face-to-face, does that mean you're doing sort of appraisals over the phone with people? Or?
Yep, over the phone, absolutely. Right. So I will go through a property. I mean, you know, we're in an area, so our office is based in DY.
Yes.
Some of the appraisals that I'm doing have got tenants in there, so I'm not meeting a vendor or a vendor's out of area. So I will go through the property and then I will send off the appraisal to the vendor and then we'll go through it over the phone.
Right. And
convenience.
Could it sometimes be a Zoom meeting or a FaceTime, or it's often just...
All of the above.
Right.
All of the above.
Okay.
What I've found, it's funny, it's changed. In the very short time that I've been in sales, I find that people have gotten less and less... more and more efficient with their time.
Yes.
And people want convenience and speed.
Yes.
And so it's about adapting as an agent and working out how can I make things convenient and fast for people. I've built a model on it.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So you talk about a lot of your market being absentee owners, so they're rental properties.
Some of them, yeah.
Yeah, it would be about, what, 50-50? Would that
Yeah,
be?
about 50-50, yeah.
So often when you would go and appraise a property and then have this phone meeting or Zoom appraisal with the owner, are you often finding yourself making a recommendation that the tenant should probably leave if they want to get the best price, or not always?
Not always.
No.
So we're working in a market, and we have done so over
Yes.
the last few years, that is all over the place.
Right.
I'm always recommending to my vendors, and look, our job obviously is to get the most amount of money for the vendor, but I also like to work with certainty. The
Yes.
market has been all over the place. If we've got a tenant and we need to give 90 days notice, let's say, I don't know what that market looks like for them in 3 months' time. So I'll have a good look at what the market's doing at the moment, and if I feel that we can get them the most amount of money with the tenant in there, we will work around that.
Okay.
There's ways you can work around it.
Yep. You mean if the presentation is not ideal?
Correct.
Yes. What are
Yeah.
some examples there?
Virtual furniture, which I know the
Right.
buyers don't love, but
That's okay.
you know, it's a much better way to present a property online.
Right.
And also you can just sweeten the deal for a tenant. It's important that you work closely with those tenants, because the more we work together, the easier it'll be for everybody. And I always like to offer up some sort of a rental rebate for a tenant. You know, give them a little bit of money off their rent per week.
Yes.
And in return, I just need them presenting the property well for me.
And do you find that they reciprocate by presenting the property a little bit
They
better
do.
anyway? Yeah,
Yeah,
that's
absolutely,
interesting.
without a doubt. And you know what, you're winning hearts. The
Yep.
tenant's happy I got them a bit of money off their rent. If they present it better, I'm in and out quicker, and everyone can just get back to living their life.
Has there been some scenarios though where you just think the owner doesn't mind waiting, the presentation is almost untenable, and you've had to have the tenant leave?
Without a doubt,
Yeah.
yeah.
So you've made those recommendations as well.
100%.
Yeah, okay.
100%. I just had one a short while ago.
Yes.
We had difficult tenants. They'd just moved in, to be fair. And
Yes.
look, you know, people have got stuff going on in their life that we
Yeah.
can't control.
Yes.
But yes, without a doubt, my recommendation was, please, let's just leave them. They've got a lot going on, and we'll circle back when we've got the tenants out of the property.
You talked about having a daily meeting with your team. So often it's referred to as a daily direction meeting or a work in progress meeting. How long does that go for, and what's the basic agenda of that?
It changes every day. It
Okay.
always surprises me
Yeah.
how much we have to talk about
Yes.
every day.
Yes.
But usually it goes for about 15 minutes.
Good.
Because there's always so many things to do past that meeting time.
Yeah.
15 minutes, very productive.
Yep. So what
Very
would be a
productive.
typical agenda for? I know it changes, but
Yep,
what
it
would
changes.
be an example?
I like to at least once a week spend 30 seconds going through every single property. Where's it at? Where's the offers? What do we need to change?
Yes.
So we'll go through all of the stock, and I can be carrying 20 plus listings at any one time.
Right.
So we'll go through all of those quickly. That takes up a fair
Yep.
amount of time. Anything that's, going unconditional, settling, the obvious things,
Yes.
photography that needs to be done. What are my appraisals for the day? Where are the appraisals at? Absolutely everything. We discuss everything.
And do your two admin assistants have much interaction with your vendors and buyers as well?
Not at all. No.
So you're really focused on the vendor management.
Yep.
Michael very much on the buyer work, and the two associates or admin assistants are very much back end, marketing, administration,
Correct.
client services, concierge.
They make me look good.
Terrific.
Yeah.
And for someone, say in Michael's position, for example, that seems like a really critical role within your team.
Super.
For a lot of, call them co-agents or associates, often they can listen to these type of interviews and think to themselves, well, I'm in that position, but I'd like to maybe be my own standalone agent and maybe build my own team. But they are very cautious, but they also realise that there's a lot of momentum happening in this team as well, and there's a lot of benefits with staying within a team. So do you endorse Michael a lot with your clients? So the market sees him basically as an agent. I mean, it's just internal that whether he's an associate or co-agent, but effectively he's like an agent within your
Michael's
business.
everywhere, and I'm adamant that Michael's face must appear on signboards and everywhere with me.
Yeah.
This is not the Lisa Novak show. There is always, it's impossible to do this on your own. It really is. And I'm well aware of that. Michael shadows me if I go away, which doesn't happen very often, but if I do, or if I'm not well, Michael literally, I'll pass the baton and he'll be able to run with everything. We communicate about 50 times a day.
Yes.
There's a lot of communication that goes on there. But the biggest thing as an agent is listing. That's the hardest thing. And so, I guess in fairness, I'm the lister.
Yes.
And, things are sort of passed over to Michael as such, and Michael's got to deal with the buyer side of things.
Yes.
So that's that tends to be the biggest issue.
Yeah. Yeah, I see that as a really critical role, within the team, and I feel that if there's longevity within these teams and everyone stays within their lane, I think it can work really well. But I think you nailed it, Lisa, when you said, Michael's on everything, so you're actually promoting his profile as well, because I feel a lot of associates say, look, I want to be my own agent. They think the reason for that is they're going to earn more money potentially, they're going to get more profile, and they might be able to learn more. But at the end of the day, that's all very achievable within what we call now EBUs or super teams, whatever you want to call it. Perhaps more so achievable.
Yeah.
So I can see why people would stay with high performing agents.
And it does really work well. I think probably the biggest issue that other agents might struggle with in a similar scenario is that maybe the person that shadows the lead agent maybe just isn't seen and heard enough.
Yes.
That could be that could be an issue. I mean, I'm interested to hear what you might see in the industry as well.
Yeah, I do often find that the reason they want to make the transition is not always the reason that they really believe is going to be effective. So what I mean by that is they feel that, okay, if I break away, I'm likely to earn more money, earn a higher profile within the marketplace, but we shouldn't be hindering people from obviously progressing. But I think the landscape of real estate's changed a lot. Like when I first started, there was sales and property management, and in sales you had to be a certain age. There was no teams, there was no associates, there was no business managers. You were just an agent. And in property management, there was no new business, no leasing, no property management section. It was just one section. You know? So I think there's a role for everyone now within these teams, and I would encourage co-agents or associates to stay with lead agents for as long as they possibly can, because they can actually earn a very, very, very decent income and have very good profile within the market. So they can actually achieve everything they're set out to achieve by being connected very tightly with a lead agent.
I agree with you, Adrian, because I had a great guy who was part of my team working as a senior assistant, and he wanted to go out on his own. Fabulous. And I love that. I'm never here to stop anyone from doing what they enjoy doing, as I covered before. But it's funny, we were having a conversation the other night, and he was saying to me, I never realised how hard it was to get the listings, you know, because I'm very fortunate. I appraise a lot, I list a lot. And sometimes it can just look like it's just magic. You know,
Yes.
I think sometimes these agents go out on their own and it can be really tricky. It can be really tricky.
I think that's the one art of real estate which is very difficult to replicate or teach. You know, I mean, I think
Yeah.
everything else, whether it's buyer work, whether it's process, whether it's marketing, even some degree of vendor management, even if they're just helping with vendor reports or whatever, that's a lot easier to acquire and to teach. But the art of listing, it's a very specific skill set, isn't
I agree. It really is.
Yeah, it's not just the skill, but it's the profile and the marketing budget that you actually need behind you to achieve all of that as well. So
Agreed.
you're known as the queen of social media. So this is not something I'm making up. I've heard it a lot, and we've spoken on stage together at a lot of conferences as well. And why do you think you've been labelled that in real estate, and how did it all start?
I think it was, I think, you know, I was willing to do maybe what others weren't 5 years ago.
Yes.
Social media's changed a lot over the last 5 years, but 5 years ago, when I came into sales, it all started because I had a vendor who had reached out to me, and I'd only been in sales for, 6 weeks. And he needed me to sell his property. He didn't have any money. He was very unwell man, and he was a very proud man too. He wouldn't take any marketing money from me. And I thought, God, my hands are really tied here. What am I going to do? So I decided that I was going to just do a Facebook video. And I remember standing at the front of his apartment on DY Beachfront, and I did this awful video, and I put it onto my Facebook page. And I actually was just using it last night. I had to do a big talk over in the UK, and it made me realise how shocking it actually was. But we've all got to start somewhere. Anyway, I put it out onto my Facebook page, and then I got a phone call from a real estate agent. And I remember thinking to myself, this is awesome. She must have a buyer. And she'd called to say, Lisa, that's the worst video I've ever seen. It's so unprofessional, and you may not know this, but we don't real estate that way. I'd stop yourself from being absolutely humiliated, and I'd pull it down.
Wow.
And I remember looking at it thinking, I can't believe what I've done. I've totally embarrassed myself, and I've totally embarrassed our industry. And I went to rip the video down off my Facebook page, and then I thought to myself, you know what? This isn't about me, and it's not about the industry. This is about a vendor who needs my help. And so I kept the video up, and I ended up selling the property off my Facebook page the next day for a phenomenal result.
Wow.
And it was at that moment, Adrian, that I thought to myself, you know what, if I can do these awful videos and get them out to social media where there's lots of eyeballs, maybe I can actually list and sell property that way.
Yes.
And that's kind of how it started. So I started grabbing all the properties that were just sitting on our website, and that had been on there for a really, really long time. And I started going around filming videos, and I ended up selling all of them.
Wow. And that was just through Facebook, and that was just through posting, not even boosting or anything.
I didn't even know about boosting.
Yeah.
I honestly didn't even know what I was doing.
Yes.
But I knew that I was offering something different.
Yes.
And even I was surprised at the time as to the sort of traction that I started to get.
Yes.
But it was something that just really appealed to the public. And I think the reason was because it was coming across, well, it was and it is authentic.
Yes.
It's just me being me selling property.
Absolutely. So obviously, since the genesis of that social media strategy, it's evolved a lot 5 years later. So if you're sitting in front of me and I'm looking to sell my property today, you've obviously got a very organised plan and process, including social media. Tell us what that looks like, or what that would sound like if you were talking to me about your compelling and comprehensive plan to get my property sold.
So there's two marketing options for you. One is plan A and one is plan B. So plan A is my $0 marketing strategy. And this is a really important part, because what evolved as a result of my social media was me realising that there actually was no $0 marketing option for vendors in the industry. The industry says, and still does now to this day, we can do off-market, which kind of evolved over the last 5 years, but off-market really means a real estate agent is going to grab a list of buyers off their database and call them.
Yes.
How long does that realistically get done for? Right, the other option was, please give me thousands and thousands of dollars of marketing money and I'm going to get you out to realestate.com domain, we're going to do an auction. But not every vendor wanted that or wants that. So I came up with the $0 marketing strategy, and that is where I can get your property out to my social media channels, out to my database. I pay for professional photos and I pay for a signboard. And that's a wonderful option for vendors that don't really know whether or not they want to get their property on the market. They just want to dip their toes in and test the market. But the success rate from my pre-market strategy has been enormous. I sell about 70% of my properties that way.
Under option A.
Under option A.
But you still provide option B, which is?
The usual, getting your property out to the market. So getting the property out to realestate.com domain. Usually at that stage we're doing an auction.
Right.
But this is a really important thing, and I do want to point this out. Not every vendor is ready to get their property on the market, and not every vendor wants to do an auction. As agents, we are there to guide them, without a doubt. Our job is to work out how we're going to get the most amount of money for our vendors. And I just want to be clear in saying that there has been many a time when I have received an offer pre-market under my plan A, and I felt we could do better by getting that property out to the market and taking it to auction.
Right.
As agents, we're there to guide our vendors, but we do need to give them options as well.
Yes. So you're saying 70% of your clients, whether it's via your guidance or through their own selection process, go with plan A?
They do.
Right?
Yep.
And it's still an exclusive agency agreement?
Without a doubt.
Yeah. And that would be minimum, I assume, somewhere between 30 to 90 days.
Yep.
That's obviously, one part of your process. So zero investment from them, but you're investing in photos, floor plan and wording as well?
Absolutely. Yep.
However, it's not appearing on Real Estate or Domain, neither. But is it appearing on your Novak website?
Novak website, social media, and the channels. I mean, the viewership that we get now is substantial.
Yes.
So out to social media, and they're the raw, authentic videos that I'm doing.
Yes.
And they're being launched out as a pre-market or an off-market, and the buyers get to see it first.
Yes.
They get the opportunity to see and potentially buy it first before we launch it out to realestate.com or domain.
And what social media channels with option A are we on? Are we on Facebook and Instagram, LinkedIn, or which one?
Facebook, Instagram, LinkedIn, and TikTok.
And TikTok as well now. Okay, has that been more recent?
TikTok has been an interesting one,
Yes.
I'll be honest.
Yes.
So Insta's probably the one where I get the most amount of viewers on. I get the most amount of traction out of my Instagram and my LinkedIn. And I naturally assumed that TikTok was just going to work really well. The other channels did. And so I started to do TikTok a couple of months ago. It's taken time. It's building traction, but consistency is a really important thing when you're doing social media. I'd been doing my socials for 6 months and just thought, am I crazy? Is anyone even watching this stuff? Before I started to really get traction. And so it's just that consistency on TikTok. It's starting to build now.
Right. And with option A, because everyone knows what option B looks like, because that's the traditional form of marketing.
Correct.
This is really not that conventional,
Correct.
the type of selling that you're doing. So I'm just curious, you're getting the photos done, but what you're putting on socials is more video content, correct?
Without a doubt.
And the photos is more so for your website. And then obviously you've got an email list of buyers, and you're emailing that out to buyers as well.
Exactly. So the brilliant thing about why I do the professional photos is because of exactly what you said. I need something to also be able to email out to my database.
Yeah. Or SMS. You might
or SMS. We do. I do mass. I use Tricall actually. I do mass SMS outs.
Yeah.
So, that's really important. But the other reason is, in the event, Adrian, I need to very quickly switch over to Plan B. I have no downtime.
Yes.
If you remember earlier on, I was talking about speed and convenience.
Yes.
So what's the quickest way I can get my vendors, if I very quickly need to pivot and move to Plan B, there's no downtime. It's the click of a button to get them on. We're not bringing through photographers.
So at what point, Lisa, would you advise your client if Plan A is taking, say, is it 2 weeks, 30 days, or what period do you think to yourself, it may not necessarily be that it's been a failure. It might be that you had multiple offers, but as you said before, you're just not confident that it's the right offer. At what point is your metric, if you like, in terms of making that recommendation to evolve the campaign?
It's after a week.
1 week only?
It's
wow.
Quick. It's quick. So I often refer to social media as instant media.
Yes.
If I'm going to get traction on my socials, it's happening fast.
Yes.
And then the database also happens quickly.
Yes.
So the minute I list a property, Michael, who deals with he's my buyer's agent, is literally on the phone. We're doing within getting an agreement. We might talk about timelines in a moment. The minute I've got an agreement and a contract of sale, within 1 hour, there will be social media content, video content. There will be a mass SMS out to all of our buyers, and there will be an email blast. It happens very, very quickly. So if I don't have an offer, if I have multiple offers and I feel that we can get more by launching to Plan B, that's all happening in that first week.
Wow.
Now, I can run it for as long as the vendor would like.
Yes.
I can do it for a year if they would like.
Yes.
But the gold happens in the first week.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So it may not necessarily sell within that time, but you may be faced with an offer that you believe, in consultation with the vendor, that is the right offer, and therefore proceed to getting it sold.
And also the buyers know, Lisa will get a property out onto her socials. It'll come out via her database. And if we don't move quickly, it's going to go out to realestate.com.
Yeah.
So there's that urgency there.
So is that part of the dialogue with the buyers? So when you and Michael are talking to buyers, it's a standard approach where it's like, this is the pre-market, as you call it.
Yeah.
Or instant media, as you call it.
Yep.
However, we do have it earmarked to potentially hit the main real estate portals if nothing happens in the next 7 to 10 days.
That's right.
And does that create urgency with buyers?
It does. Yes, it definitely does. But in saying that, the flip side for a buyer, I mean, the market's ever changing. In a roaring hot market where there's not a lot of stock and we have an oversupply of buyers, how much would you love to be served up a property? And all you've got to do is just put forward a great offer and you can potentially secure the property. Yes. As opposed to, well, if you don't want to do that right now, that's okay. We'll see you at an auction in 3 weeks' time.
And a lot of your properties don't actually end up at Plan B, do they? You were saying 70%.
They don't. Yeah, huge amounts sell prior. I mean, I've had properties, literally, I had a property that I had listed in Freshwater. It was about a year ago now. I had 2 there, actually. And I had done a video out the front of the property. I hadn't even done a walkthrough. I didn't have access into the property. I wasn't getting through until later on in the afternoon, but sold the property in 4 hours.
Wow.
I literally had someone who'd seen it on my Facebook and had contacted me and said, where's this property? We're looking to buy in that street. And 4 hours later, we'd sold the property.
Incredible. So you've built a huge database of SMS, email, and social media followers. So that's effectively your buyer pool, if you like. And do you display that at the listing appointment, or do you just explain it? Are you using many materials or collateral at your listing appointments, or just explaining the process?
So I've got a great proposal that gets put together for me, which is, it's honestly, it's fabulous. It's probably one of the best I've seen. Not on an iPad. I love hard copy stuff.
Good.
I love it. We do have soft copy versions, obviously, but I still like to use hard copy. And it's a magazine style.
Right.
and we just get straight to the point.
Okay.
Straight to the point. Speed and convenience.
Right. So that booklet or manual, if you like, what are the main agenda points that you're actually discussing? I mean, obviously speed and convenience, but is there any other content that you're actually dealing with?
Timelines is really important because
Yes.
I like to move very quickly.
Yes.
I'll often have vendors say, how quickly can you get my property on the market? And it's like, well, if you can get me a contract within a day, I'll have you on social media that quickly. The things that vendors want to know is really, it's, what's my property worth? How fast can you get me on the market?
Yeah.
How much is marketing and what are your commissions?
Yes. Okay.
They're the main points.
Are you very fixed on your commission and in terms of what you've self-regulated at? Because obviously I remember when I first got into real estate, it was deregulated. It was actually, regulated, so it was a fixed commission. Now it's deregulated. Do you have your own regulated fee that you put forward to a lot of clients?
I offer a flexi fee.
Right.
So I give the fee to the vendor and I go, there it is, that's the range. Pay me what you like within that range. I just ask you to take into account service and results.
Excellent.
Yeah.
So that's your approach for every listing?
Every listing.
Excellent. And you don't need to say what that range is, but that's an interesting. So it's a discretionary range, and just from a practical sense, so we write that range on the agency agreement, and then after the sale, I assume the owner puts in writing what
They do. Yeah. So I'll contact them and just say, Adrian, I trust that you were happy with everything. I trust you were happy with the result.
Yes.
Could you please nominate the commission you'd like to pay me within the range we provided you with?
And
it's an interesting way, and you'd be surprised because a lot of vendors, when I'm sitting in front of them at a listing presentation, will say, wouldn't vendors just opt for the bottom end of the range? But if I'm getting you a result that far surpassed your expectations.
And service, you mentioned.
And service.
Keep in mind service and result. That was a key takeaway.
Then commission actually gets removed from the equation. People don't care. It's like when you go to a great restaurant.
Yes.
You've had a wonderful experience.
Yes.
You tip accordingly.
And what percentage, just approximately, would be at the top, middle and bottom of the range that people from a discretion point of view, decide to pay you?
I'd have to say 90% at the top.
Wow.
5% in the middle and 5% at the bottom.
Wow. And you found that you were sort of almost made to offer this because the bottom of the range is where your competitors are going in at. So effectively, you're matching your competitors, but providing plenty of upside. In your case, you're saying 90% potentially upside to actually prove yourself both in terms of the result and the service to get paid higher.
Yeah. What I learned quite early on was that commission becomes irrelevant when you over-service people and you get them a great result. If I could rewind the whole situation and go from the end to the beginning, I can guarantee you that vendors are saying, just tell us what commission we need to pay.
Yes.
But people don't know me when I'm just sitting in front of them in their lounge room.
Yes.
I'm sitting there and I'm saying, this is what I can do, this is what I have to offer.
Yes.
That's all they know. They may have done the digital interview on social media and they've seen my results. But as I said, if I could just flip the whole campaign around, commission actually becomes irrelevant. And the reason I did the flexi was because I don't want to be chosen on commission.
Yes.
I'd like to be chosen on all the other things.
Yes, interesting. The best part about that, Lisa, is that it's not something that is a huge discussion point at the listing. It's like, that's the range. You're in as the owner, you're actually in control of what you end up paying me, but it's certainly competitive because the bottom end of the range is competitive in terms of what the market is, and the top end is still probably competitive, but you're welcome to pay that as well.
And it takes this awkward conversation away, because I think it's probably one of the hardest conversations agents need to have about commission.
Yes.
Where a vendor's sitting in front of you saying, can you do a little bit better on that? It's an awkward conversation.
Yes.
So it's like, I don't want to have this conversation with you. You pay me what you feel I'm worth. At the end, please just base it on service and results. I'd love you to choose me on all the other things, the properties that I've sold, what my other vendors have to say about me, my social media, all the other bits and pieces, just not on that.
Excellent. So as we start to wrap up, Lisa, it'd be really interesting to get your view on work-life balance if you're a high-performing agent, and also an understanding of what sort of hours and days you would typically work.
Okay, I'm having a giggle because there is no work-life balance.
Yeah.
And look, you know, what's right for me is not right for other people.
Absolutely.
At 51 years of age, it took me 51 years to work out that not everyone wants what I want. Mm-hmm. Success looks really different to everybody. For me, it's a personal challenge. It has nothing to do with commissions and GCI, nothing to do with it. It's a personal challenge. As I said, I wanted to cut ground fast. It was a personal challenge for me. The hours that I work, the day starts at about 5:30 in the morning and it finishes up at about 10:30 at night. You know, there's a lot of hours there. I'm constantly available to my vendors, to my team. You know, I give a lot of time to them. The problem with that is that there is no work-life balance. Mm-hmm. And I would get to the end of a week and think, I literally have not sat around a dinner table with my kids. This became a problem for me and for them, you know. So I started to put some not-negotiables into place. And it was a game changer for me. And I highly recommend it.
What were those, if you don't mind sharing?
So the not-negotiables were Tuesday night and Friday night, dinner at the table with the kids, no matter what. Because I wouldn't miss a listing presentation and I wouldn't miss an auction when it was in my diary. And so I just thought, this is the way that I'm going to be able to do this, as crazy as it sounds, but it works.
Good.
And it works for us.
Good.
So Tuesdays, Fridays, no phones, 2 hours, because I've got adult children. And that really works well. And Sundays, if we can, we like to do something together as a family. Breakfast, lunch, dinner, whatever it might be.
But that traditionally would still be your day off though, Sunday?
It is, yeah.
Good. So
even though I walk around going, hang on, you know, but yes, it is, yeah.
Look, I'm glad you're really honest about work-life balance being a bit of a misnomer, because it's a paradox really, isn't it?
Yeah.
I mean, I often talk about we should be calling it work-life harmony, meaning that you decide at whatever chapter you are in your life and stage in your life, how you'd like to harmonise that. You know, if you'd like to make sacrifices for work, well then there's other areas that are going to be affected. That's just the reality of it, okay? And there's only so many areas in our life, whether it's career, whether it's family, whether it's health, whether it's spirituality. So it's impossible for all of it to be balanced. It's just not going to work. But, you know, what your life looked like 3 years ago was different, and what it might look like in 3 years' time might be different. But at the moment, you still wake up every day, as you said, and and you ask yourself that rhetorical question, do I love doing what I do? And while the answer is still yes, you're going to keep doing it.
And the day I wake up and the answer's no, it's probably over. It's probably over. But, you know, as I said, not everyone wants what I want.
Yes.
You know, I couldn't understand, why am I working all these hours and people don't want to work the same amount of hours? Not everyone wants what I want.
Everyone's on their own journey.
Absolutely. And I'm totally respectful of that. I am. But, you know, I have to say, pretty much everyone in my team does work these crazy hours. We're all very aligned.
Yes.
And that's probably why it works so well.
And do you believe that there is no shortcut, that if someone is committed to being a high-performing agent, that they will have to make sacrifices in other areas of their life? That is just a reality and an objective truth in real estate. Is that right?
Absolutely. You do. You know, look, you've got to understand, Adrian, that if you want a holiday more because that's what you want to do, expect that there's going to be some sort of a follow-on effect in your career. There absolutely is, you know. And again, I mean, I haven't had a proper holiday in a really long time. There's definitely one on the agenda coming up at the end of the year. You know, you need to. The burnout is real.
Yes.
And I think, you know, people do need to be extremely mindful of that. But you have got to put in the hard yards. As you said, there is no shortcut here. There's no shortcut to it.
Have you burnt out or come close to burning out yet?
Look, I I'm mindful of what I need to do to make sure that I can get up and be game on every day. I think a lot of people aren't maybe as tuned in. I know that I have got to sleep well.
Yes.
And if I don't sleep well, I can't function.
Yes.
That's it. That's my medicine. You know, I've got to sleep well. Exercise, sleep well, and try and eat well if I can. Sounds boring, but I do like to have a drink every now and then. But yeah, sleep for me is the medicine that I need.
And I remember speaking on stage with you about a year ago, and you were saying, correct me if I'm wrong, that as part of your day, obviously previously in this interview you mentioned you're doing 3 to 5 appraisals or dollar productive appointments, whether they're face-to-face or Zoom or phone or whatever, but also that you invest about 3 to 4 hours a day on social media as well. Tell us more about that and what that involves.
Yeah, everything. So constantly filming stuff. You know, I walked in here filming.
Yes.
If you will get in, you will get out what you put in. That's anything in life. And so if you expect to get results out of your social media, you've got to put the hours in. So it's constantly filming content. I try and do as much live content as I can. I'm very comfortable in front of cameras. For those people that are watching that aren't, you can just do a pre-record.
Sure.
It's not going to give you the brownie points on social media, but it's better than doing nothing at all, you know, if that makes you feel more comfortable. But 3 hours is filming content, uploading content, answering inquiry.
And you're literally filming and uploading and posting all yourself?
All myself.
Yep. And what are your thoughts around investing money in social media? Because obviously most of yours, if not all, sounds like it's authentic and free content. But if an agent wanted to get traction quicker or wanted to take it to the next level, or I'm curious to see if you have done this at all. And the two main areas are either sponsored ads or boosting through geo-targeting.
Yeah.
Have you actually trialled those? At all?
I love it. I'm all for it.
Yep.
I think it's the cheapest form of marketing money can buy. I really do. Northern Beaches, where I'm based, we used to have the Manly Daily Real Estate section, and it became obsolete 2 years ago. If you did not replace print media with something else, I think you should probably be a little bit nervous. You know, it's as I said, it's the cheapest form of marketing money can buy. You've been in the real estate sector for a really long time. Do you remember how much the ads were in the newspaper?
Yeah, thousands of dollars. Yep.
Imagine putting that behind social media. And you don't need to get traction. A couple of $100 once a week behind your post is going to get you an enormous amount of eyeballs. I personally prefer the organic. I just do. I want to know the people that are following me, they want to be there. We'll get more out of each other.
Do you put money behind some of your posts though?
Not often, no.
Not often, okay.
No,
so when you say
often.
organic then, what metrics are you monitoring? Like obviously comments, shares, likes, that's the main metrics at that point?
Yeah.
Because if it's organic, that's all you've got to play with. But when you're boosting, obviously you can have a little bit more of a forensic look around where the person's come from.
Yeah,
and, a
you
lot
can.
of other factors.
And as you said, you can literally geo-target. So, you can find an area, and I usually say keep it to sort of, a 5 kilometre radius. You don't want to do any more than that around the area that you work in. But, for me, look, I know I've been doing it long enough now. I know that my clients like to see the pre-market stuff.
Yes.
They want the goods and they want to see them first. That's what works. But I won't just do that on my socials. I'll put all sorts of stuff in there about what's going on with the industry.
Yes.
There's so much knowledge that we hold as real estate agents that we just think is common knowledge to everybody.
What about personal or family content? Are you posting much of that?
I don't do a lot.
Okay.
I pop little bits and pieces in every now and then, but I don't do a lot. I do like to keep that part of my social media quite separate.
Sure.
Yeah.
Okay. So what would be a tip to someone who's listening, whether they're an associate, an agent, or even in new business?
So live video content, is really important. You will get brownie points from Facebook, Instagram, TikTok if you're doing the live stuff. If you can't bring yourself to do the live stuff, do the pre-record. It's better than doing nothing, and then just upload it to all of your social media channels. That's number one. Number two, authenticity.
Right.
It's a really big one.
What do you mean by that?
Be yourself.
Okay.
Be yourself. You know, that's nothing, we can't train people to be that. Who I am here and who I am when those cameras aren't rolling, it's the same person, Adrian. You know, so be yourself. It's really, really important. People respect you for the authenticity. And again, I can't tell you how many times I walk into a listing presentation and vendors say, I feel like I know you.
Yes.
Right? It's lovely. It's important. And consistency.
Consistency.
That's
So
the biggest
daily.
one. Yeah.
Daily. And
Yeah.
you're posting obviously multiple times a day, but even if someone could commit to daily, then that would be a good definition of consistency to
Look,
start
you
with.
don't need to be crazy like me and do
Yes.
3 to 5 hours a day.
Yes.
I put a lot in, but I get a lot out from
Yeah.
it. If you can't manage that, just do 15 minutes a day.
Yes.
You know, do something that works for you, but do it consistently.
Excellent.
That's really important.
Lisa, I've really enjoyed our conversation together. I know
Likewise.
we've known each other for a long time and it's been great to sit down. The last thing I always like to have my guests is allow them to ask me any question for the benefit of the audience.
I'd like to know, it's great, I'd love that. Now, you've interviewed a lot of people, you've worked with a lot of agents. What would be the biggest consistency that you would see with real estate agents that you train and that you deal with?
The ones that perform really well are not necessarily the best negotiators or have the best gift of the gab. What I find the consistent traits are the ones that are very disciplined, that have good energy, have a clear mindset, and are very process driven. Because
Interesting.
They are what I call innate traits, because I can teach negotiation skills or product knowledge. Anyone can learn that. But mindset, energy, discipline, process, that's something which is the foundation for any success, whether it's real estate or not, because product knowledge, negotiation skills, scripts and dialogues, that can be quite acquired and that can be a taught skill set. So I'm looking for always the rougher diamonds because they're the ones that I've seen excel the most in real estate.
Yeah, right.
And I say rough diamonds respectfully. Even when you first started in real estate, you know, you just said your first video was terrible.
Yeah.
You know, but I would imagine that the traits I've just explained there, mindset, energy, discipline, process, are consistent with you as well. And the other stuff, you know what, you just learned as you went along. And now 5 years later, you're in the top of your game. So I think that's a really good example.
Yeah, I love that. And let's leave on a piece of advice. What's the one piece of advice you would give to someone, whether they're starting out or they've been in the industry for a really long time? What would that be?
I feel that if you're out of momentum, you've got to catch that very, very quickly, because a bad day could lead to a bad week, which could lead to a bad month, to a bad quarter. So being out of momentum would involve probably not enjoying what you're doing anymore. You know, I think if you're feeling off purpose and you're conducting activities which you're just not liking or not passionate about, I think you need to recalibrate and either build a team around you that can help you do those things so you can focus on your highest and best use, for example.
Yeah.
And if you're just starting out, then obviously you're going to need to do a bit of everything, but gravitate towards what your sweet spot is and specialise in that, and then find people around you, whether it's people in your office or whether people you've got to hire or whether it's people in other departments, that can help elevate you in those other areas, which may not be your sweetest spots in particular. And I think you've done a very good job of that, Lisa.
Yeah,
yourself.
thank you. Thank you.
So there we go.
Very good.
Excellent. So again, we really appreciate your
It's
time.
my pleasure. I've
And
loved it.
It's been great to give back to the industry. I know both of us have this altruistic attitude towards the industry where we love to give back. So listeners, thank you for tuning in, and we'll see you next time.
Thank you.